the whole purpose of the Disney film is a traumatization program to create MKUltra mind-controlled slaves.
Ask about Illuminati, since the charting of Peters. Is it Disney mind controlled? Is this MKUltra deluxe? Occult Disney, we go from real to real. Occult Disney, Bohemian Grove and no more real. Occult Disney, ask about Illuminati. Occult Disney, we teach occult to everybody. Occult Disney, the wish upon a star. Occult Disney, you know not to travel far. Oh, Occult Disney, the new brand Pinocchio. Yeah, yeah. Occult Disney, it's a fun so adore. Occult Disney, please enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Occult Disney podcast. It's where we act like animals and go feral about every theatrical Disney release. As always, this is Matt here. Over there, it's a Paranoid American. How's it going?
Fear, treachery, and bloodlust.
That's right. You know, you get that look in your eye, that nice, the disturbing look in your eye, and just rip at somebody. That's a nice, horrific imagery you get in Zootopia. That could burn in a small child's soul. That's what I remember from the movie. But yeah, today it's Zootopia. Why don't you bring on our guest there?
Yes. Speaking of burning child souls, we've got Isaac Weishaupt on, the founder of the Bavarian Illuminati. Time traveled here from 1770s. How you doing, man?
I'm here to indoctrinate the youth into the ways of the occult and the Illuminati in my not-so-secret manners.
There's the clip. And I got to say, man, this, I'm going to lead it with top-tier Disney movie, easily. I mean, we've watched every single Disney movie from the 1930s till now, and I'm ready to put this one in my top 10 right off the bat. Maybe even higher, but I'm going to stay with top 10 for now.
No kidding. Yeah. So let me preface for the audience, because this is obviously going to be a sort of Disney themed show here. I have practically no background with Disney. I'm sure I've talked to you about this before, Thomas, but I was raised in a house where we didn't watch Disney, and my first and only exposure was when my babysitters came over. They had the VHS tape of Alice in Wonderland, and I soaked it in. It was my favorite thing ever. When they would come over, I would just stare at this movie like, yo, what is this? You know? And as far as the other Disney movies, I didn't have an interest in seeing them. So the only Disney movies I've seen as an adult were when I've done film analysis for my podcast or whatever. And I had a lot of requests to do Zootopia, and that's how, I entered here on today's episode, because I've got, this is one of those ones, just like you said, was loaded down with lots of themes that you could take in a bunch of directions. For me, I always take it into the realm of the occult and the hidden symbolism that we find within it, because I'm sure, as you guys talked about, the whole background of Walt Disney takes us into Rosicrucians, Order of De Molay, the Egyptian Mystery School teachings, and it's all different flavors of the same thing, like occult stuff. And I just think that I do think that Disney is a topic probably worth more of my time. I just don't like it. I don't have kids, so not to say that you have to have kids to watch Disney, but I don't find any good excuses to watch it, and I didn't really like it growing up anyway. So for me to watch a Disney movie is kind of a force, to be honest, but I do think there's a lot going on in the world of Disney.
Well, let me do my quick disclosure too for anyone that's watching unfamiliar with the show, is that I worked at Disney for 10 years doing animation. And so I was indoctrinated as an adult, and maybe not necessarily as a kid, but it's funny that you say that your introduction was Alice in Wonderland from a babysitter, because one of the deepest theories that I think we've got on this show we've been developing is that Disney movies were literally created to babysit children so that the parent can go off in the other room, or the child can become engrossed in the story. And that's when they kill the parent, or when the kid gets kidnapped, it feels more real because your parents aren't there, because the babysitter has this on, right? So when Alice gets lost as a child, this might be the first time that you're contemplating the idea of, oh, wow, like I might not see mommy and daddy again. And you're like 5 or 6 or however old you are. So your experience with Disney, your first one, is the like ideal first Disney experience in terms of the Disney egregore wanting to spread its tentacles a little bit farther. But like you are the perfect patient zero for that.
Yeah, and it's probably what indoctrinated me into this interest I have of the occult, because I am not an occultist. As you can tell by my militant shirt, I'm an Greek Orthodox Christian, but that's not to say that I am one of those sort of judgmental conspiracy guys. Like, I don't care if people believe in all this stuff. Like, it's fine by me. It's just not something I believe.
I'm happy doing that. Yeah, we'll judge them.
No, I like to think one of the things with the show is we are having fun with this. I like Zootopia. I think you like Zootopia. Are we going to talk about weird things about Zootopia? Oh yeah, for sure. Those are here, But
I'm also trying to have a good time, and I'm not judging people for watching this. I'm not saying you shouldn't watch it. I'm more of the camp of, if you watch this, keep an eye out for these things, and then you can make that choice of, is this something I want to have my kids exposed to or not? Or do I just want to have a conversation with them about what is possibly going on here? That kind of thing.
I mean, there's even parts where my daughter's 16. By the way, I went last night. I got home and I asked her what she thought of Zootopia, and she was brushing her teeth and answered me in Japanese. So I didn't really get a good answer from that. Then I was like, how many times do we watch it? I was like, 10. She was like, down, down, down. Okay, 3, up, up, up. I think we settled at 7. So and trying to get information out of her while she was brushing her teeth, because in Japan they'll brush your teeth for like 30 minutes sometimes. It's crazy.
Well, I'll be the resident expert Disney junkie then, that like has actually watched all of these and can kind of rate them. But I think it's up there. And Isaac, if you're ever looking to be sold on a Disney movie, I seriously recommend the very first one. It's the most occult, the most Rosicrucian, the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It kind of doesn't get better than that particular one, especially for classic Disney. This movie, Zootopia, I would put like up somewhere on that platform. It's not like side by side, shoulder by shoulder, but it's like in the same display case.
This one's genetically engineered to appeal to you, though, because before this, one of your favorites was Robin Hood, and this one was like, we want to make another Robin Hood. The original idea was this was going to be the Three Musketeers, and just looking up at the production, this seems like the most written by committee movie they've ever done, where the committee
I don't hate it, man. Usually those suck. We've had example after example. This one worked, and it's got MKUltra mind, like literal MKUltra mind control. It's got government corruption. It's also the most succinct way of describing to a kid, here's how government overreach works, here's how police can bend the rules and like technically be able to like go over a warrant, technically be able to invade your private property, but for a good reason. And I haven't seen any other movie that would be targeted directly at kids that explains this so succinctly. And it does it on like this formula, like a beat after beat. Like I'm literally seeing the movie say like, oh, this is where they explain this. And it's like, damn, 5 minutes in, 10 minutes in, 15 minutes in, almost every 5 minutes, you get a new like life lesson that was like genetically engineered by Disney to just immediately sink into like a young kid's brain.
Mm-hmm. Maybe, I mean, I guess the message is here, and the packaging is what they were going for. Because as I was mentioning, it's going to be the Three Musketeers, and they're like, oh, let's move it up to the 60s. It'll be like a James Bond thing. The Fox was going to be, James Bond. And they're like, oh, the city part's cooler. Let's just make it the city part. Oh, his sidekick actually should be the protagonist, being, Judy Hopper. So they flip that. So the form of the movie just keeps changing, which is mildly interesting, going from one committee to the next.
I find there's various elements here. We've got this government manufactured fear of the other or the outsider. We've got law and order authoritarianism. We've got a little bit of eugenics. We've got, engineered false flags, kind of fits into that government manufactured fear thing, which if you've seen, to keep it in the sort of realm of pop culture movies, if you've seen the movie One Battle After Another, they directly showed you this exact thing. Did you guys see that movie?
It's drawn a blank.
Oh, okay. It's the new one with Leo DiCaprio. It's up for all.
Yeah.
Yeah, Paul Thomas Anderson. Yep.
I the one catch is I get 1 week windows for movies like that sometimes. So if I don't see it in the 1 week, like I was like maybe last week I'll see a movie. Every movie is like straight in Japanese or dubbed. So I guess Avatar comes out next week. I can see a movie, but
okay, yeah. One bad off note is it's pretty good, but there is, and no plot spoilers, but there is a scene where the military is basically trying to find a reason to harass these protesters, and they call in for one of the undercover agents who's posing as a protester to throw a Molotov cocktail so that they can start the arrests and things like that. And
agent
that's
provocateur, right? That's the thing.
Agent provocateur, yeah.
Scientific name for that. And then one other dynamic to layer on this too. There's so many more that we can go over, but that all shows how politically correct, like woke politics, can be weaponized and then used to overthrow, like topple a government, because that's kind of what happens is that they usher in this bunny rabbit as a cop, and it's the first one ever, and it kind of represents like, oh, it's an initiative, it's an affirmative action thing, but it really gets shoehorned in by this other prey that's trying to work her way up through the system. It gets deep, but there's so many different really like underlying themes here that you can talk to like an adult about, not just a kid about. It's kind of like layered more than any other Disney movie that I remember in like the last 10 or 20 years worth that we've been watching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. That's definitely how it works. And then, because I think they even say at the beginning that Judy is like a diversity hire or something to that effect. Like it's pretty out there in the open.
The only reason she gets the job, and it's the only reason that when she strays off of just being a meter maid, that she's allowed to like keep pursuing this higher level, almost like detective work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting because I'm not sure how you guys want to do this. I could kind of walk through the movie with you guys if you'd like.
Usually I do a really quick summary. So if anyone's listening or watching that's never seen it, doesn't intend to, I can just give you like a very like the shortest version possible. I think like a 30 version of this. So Bunny grows up in this world, prey versus predators. But the animal world has evolved to modern day, and it's just like humans gained consciousness and we're no longer savage. So now it's the animal world is no longer savage. They're living in harmony. We don't really understand what their diet is or how it works exactly, but they're driving cars. They got jobs. They're no longer savages out in the middle of the woods. She becomes the first cop ever, the first prey cop, because everyone's separated into prey and predators, uncovers a vast conspiracy in which another prey is engineering like a fear capsule or like a special drug made out of a nightshade. And when they dart you with it, it turns you feral and you attack people. And the government is now using this secret MKUltra drug dart that changes you into a savage to then instill fear, to then usher in sort of like a patriot act of Zootopia. They unravel it at the very end, and her best friend becomes a buddy cop. The end. I think I hit the main plot points there.
That's pretty good. Yeah, and the name Zootopia even tells you this is a play on the term utopia, which is when you read any of the research of the Illuminati or the occult, you always find these fantasies of creating this perfected utopia, which is always a perfected totalitarian control system, right? Because they don't really want us to have freedoms. They want us to be slaves. And you'll see this with Manly P. Hall's Secret Destiny of America. You'll see this with Francis Bacon's New Atlantis book. They basically show you the path of what you call the technocracy. They think that when technology evolves enough, they can put this science, scientists and priests used to be the people that called the shots in society, and they kind of want to go back to that. They want to have a science-based or AI authoritarian system, which you also see in the show Westworld as well, with this AI sphere they call the Rehoboam, which is based on a biblical lineage. But anyway, it goes on and on. But every time you see this reference to the utopia, or at least I do, when I see this idea of a perfected society, I always look at it with a critical eye. You know, I'm as much of a idealist hippie as the next guy. Like I always think we as a society could do better. But then there's this other side where the people in control and the people in power try to dangle that over your head and say, well, hey, we could do that. You know, that's what the Great Reset is, right? And it's over and over and over. It's all this stuff, this new Atlantis, this new world order.
Everything will be fine.
Yeah, it's the bugs, and you know, and the latest push is the talk about the golden age, and this ties into this. I did a whole series on the dark enlightenment and the technocracy that these billionaire weirdos want to basically overthrow the government and the Constitution and create this new perfected golden age, this perfected society of network states, which is, you know, it's about pure 100% surveillance. And, you know, they pitch it in a certain way that makes it sound like, you know, we need to overthrow the old system and the new one is the best way to do that. So it's the most sort of egalitarian society that we can produce. But I mean, when I look at these people like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk, I don't look at those guys and think like, oh yeah, they really have the best in mind for us as a species, you know?
No, I'd like to bring up my sync reviewing where about a week before I watched Zootopia, I had a review of the 2012, I think it's 2012 Dread, which is kind of like the other side of the Zootopia coin. It's kind of the same thing. It's a police officer and the sidekick basically, except here. And there's our fake drug. I was about to ask, like, what is your favorite, fake movie drug? Because that has the what do they call it? Slow-mo or something, right? So you have this crime lady controlling the building with that, and Judge Dredd coming and just arbitrarily, shooting everyone because Judge, Jury, Executioner. Zootopia doesn't get that quite hard in the paint for that, but that's the more adult version, isn't it?
It's a similar premise, and I like the idea that Zootopia, Utopia, inherently it's got some kind of like authoritarian, tyrannical aspect. I'm curious, is Zootopia more Orwellian or more Huxleyan?
I haven't read Brave New World yet, so I would offer that it's probably more like Brave New World, where it's because in the I just did a series on 1947 Orwell's 1947, and his book was written from the angle of from his experiences that totalitarianism is bad no matter how it is achieved, and it can be achieved through socialist communism or it can be achieved through fascism. And in 1947, it is a pure surveillance state. So there's that element.
84, right?
Oh yeah, 1984. Sorry, man. Good catch.
Flip the numbers to the release date. Makes sense.
I just did a 2-part series with Joel Thomas on 1947 and all of the strangeness around it. So it's just in my brain, and it's late at night for me. So good catch.
I do think that Zootopia is maybe like a little bit of mix of both, because my understanding is that Brave New World is like, we're doing the surveillance to ourselves. Like we're being set up to be inconvenienced by not surveilling ourselves and not feeding into the system. Whereas Orwellian, it's completely external. It's this thing being imposed on us as opposed to something that we're like willing participants in. So I think that Zootopia is maybe a little bit of both of those things combined.
1984's got the key phrase where it's the government now or is the boot that's constantly just kicking you in the face.
Yeah, no, what's your vision of the future? Imagine a boot stomping on a human face forever. I believe.
Yes, there we go. There we go. You got whereas Brave New World is more like the we will own everything, you will take Soma and be happy. So people are like this weird plastic happy. That's the whole thing in Brave New World. The savage comes from the desert, from a small community that is not connected to the grid, and he knows Shakespeare. The people in the city only read like instruction manuals.
So a little bit of both. So and also the biggest theme that keeps coming up in this movie, it is this like separation between castes, or the easiest one is that they just do a binary. They say it's prey versus predator. It's literally the first 30 seconds of the movie they're reenacting, and here's how it worked. That predators killed prey, and then she's got like all this blood and she's like screaming blood. Thought that was interesting for like the very first Disney movie that someone watches, but I loved it. I loved how over the top it was, but that's the very first of these different separations. And then as it goes in, well, now it starts becoming like bunnies all have to do this thing. They all have to raise carrots versus foxes get to do this, and hamsters get to do this. So now all of a sudden there is this separation beyond just a binary prey and predator now within those little communities. And then they also show that Zootopia itself is separated into these climates, into scales. Like if you're a tiny animal, you live in this part of town. If you're a big animal, there's a scene where the fox tries to go in and buy a ice cream from like an elephant store, and the elephant kind of gives him like a civil rights era, like, we don't allow your kind in here. There's a lot of that stuff too. People like touching the sheep's wool, and they're like, you can't just touch a sheep's wool like that. So I think that it kind of like layers all these different ways that people are separated. But again, it like starts with a really easy to understand one, and then it keeps like fractaling itself over and over again.
Don't call the bunny cute unless you're a bunny. Yeah.
Yeah, the idea, I think on the surface you could say that this movie seems like it's about racial relations. You know, it's kind of, I think that's probably the more basic thing people would say.
Most super like superficial layer. Like, you're right, it's 100% correct, but you have to like peel that layer back, and you'll find another one and another one right behind it.
Right, and I find some satanic doctrines throughout this movie.
Well, Disney movie, yeah.
And like first off, you know, the anthropomorphic thing, which is common in virtually every cartoon, right? You've got animals that are acting like humans, but that is one of the ideas of Satanism, right? One of the 9 satanic statements is that man is just an animal. And with Satanism, it's all about this idea that we shouldn't deny our inner shadow, our inner animal side. And that's kind of what you were talking about with this. There's these social constructs for the characters of what they should or shouldn't do. And the more that we deny those inner animalistic reptilian brain urges, the more we suffer. That's what the, Church of Satan would say. And it's man's true nature to pursue whatever they want to do. And this is very much like a hyper libertarian sort of philosophy that LaVey had with the Church of Satan. But what they did was they would do rituals, and they would dress up as animals because man is just an animal. And they were almost revering the animals, because the animals don't hold back. Like, if you have a dog or a cat, like, they kind of do what they want to do. They're more emotionally true to themselves and their species, and mankind could learn something from that is kind of how they look at this. So you see the animals, the sort of face masks and the animalistic sort of rituals that they do. And something else you'll see in the movie, because when I watched it, I'd sort of, frame by frame it sometimes when there's fast scenes to try to see what's going on. And there's this one character that wears a shirt. This guy gets off a train, and his shirt, he has the sort of the goat head, which is very much tied to the Baphomet, right? The goat with the bobs, which is your satanic mascot, if you will. And the Baphomet is probably known by Walt Disney, right? Because Walt Disney was in the Order of De Molay, which was a reference to the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar. You guys already know this stuff, I'm sure, but the Knights Templar, they were shut down because of these claims of heresies and these claims that they were worshiping the goat of Mendes, aka the Baphomet. And some people say that this is the skull of John the Baptist. Whatever it is, it was this idea of an occult belief system that they adhered to. So when I see that symbol in the movie, I think that it's very possible that was put there on purpose, because there's other elements in this story that sort of get into satanic doctrine as well.
Well, we also get the musical pill, like basically getting right to what you're saying. Because when I saw this 2016, 2017, we watched it a few times. That's about the time I'm actually starting to read like conspiracy books and stuff. So one, I'm like, oh, weird. They made Chinatown to a children's movie. That's weird. The other thing is the song "Try Everything." That literally is the Crowley the doctrine. And at the time, I was like, that seems like a bad message. The company, I just started working for them, the one I still work for, a year before English school. And what was it? At the name of the school, we want to help. We want to be helped by everyone. We want to try everything. It had the same thing. And I tried to tell them, like, oh no, you should change the grammar. Like, it's just we're able to do everything. We shouldn't actually do everything. Where this song is saying, try everything, even if you don't want to, and it seems horrible and immoral. You should try it if your urges have you, doing it.
Wait, as soon as that song and the hook came on, my immediate notes were including drugs, black magic, murder, like try everything. And
that's what I brought up with the company. I was like, the slogan suggests you should do all those things. You should try killing people. Yeah, you should try freebasing, all of those sort of things too.
On the note of the like satanic connection and the anthropomorphization of the animals and all that, I do think this one is worth pointing out on an interesting note, because in every other Disney movie that I can remember up till now, the thing that either makes a person special is that they can commune with nature, or that somehow humanity gets invoked inside of an animal and they get anthropomorphized, right? And this movie is the first one where they show the inverse of that. Here's what happens when you remove human consciousness or Rosicrucian consciousness from an animal that somehow became elevated. And once you remove it and they revert back into this savage base form, that this is this pure chaos, almost like a moral evil, that if you remove the human intellect from anything, it now becomes an evil version of itself. And I can't think of any other Disney movie that specifically does that exact thing, where it's like, we're going to remove that human intellect and look what's left over. Here's this horrible nature left over. Every other version of a Disney movie, they're sort of glorifying nature. They're saying like, look, nature in its base and rawest form is the most perfect you could ever get to. And here we've got like an inversion of that same idea.
Well, the wolves have their really dumb but really funny Achilles heel, where if one of the wolves starts howling, even though they're not under the, they're not feral, right? But if a wolf starts howling, we're all going to start howling. They cannot break that part of their nature.
They're dinner.
Yeah.
There's a scene near the beginning of there's a mob boss, and he's talking about these otters that have gone rabid, and he says, we may be evolved deep down, we are still animals, right? And it just this point kind of keeps coming out throughout the show. And when you look at the idea of, like, Anton LaVey was very much like I'm trying to think of like an exact quote or phrase, but anyway, he was very he was a carny too, but he was very much like, if someone wrongs you, he was the opposite of, Christ would say, turn the other cheek. He was the opposite of that, right? He was the adversarial, he was the other force that was like, no, if someone hits you, you hit them back, and it's very much a Church of Satan philosophy that you see there.
And have you gotten deep into like the Kenneth Anger films? I know LaVey and Kenneth Anger are pretty related. And just for media, you put on like what is Lucifer Rising is a pretty interesting watch for that vibe.
He was a fascinating guy, Kenneth Anger. Lucifer Rising has it's kind of a hodgepodge of all the, occult conspiracy topics that you've seen. It's got ancient aliens coming alive over Egypt and them worshiping these ancient deities. There's even a Kabbalistic mikvah scene where they've got a guy doing a cleansing ritual in a bathtub, which I always, tie into some of the odd celebrities that pass away in the bathtub. Your Winnie Houston and her daughter, Bobby Christina, and who else? There's lots of people. Brittany Murphy was in the bathroom. I don't know if she was in the bathtub. You had the Cranberries lead singer. You had, what was that dude? Aaron Carter. You had Kim Kardashian not arrested. She got robbed in Paris, and they put her in the bathtub and threatened her life. And that was when Kanye West had that mental breakdown. I think it's because he was getting a little too close to some of the secret societies that secretly run all this stuff. But yeah, the whole thing with Kenneth Anger is fascinating because he ties into the Charles Manson family and through Bobby Beausoleil, and it's just it starts going off the rails real quick, and even there you can connect into Satanism with the Process Church and things like this, which I'm actually working on an MKUltra deep dive. And the Charles Manson story is something I've always been intrigued by, so I've got a whole section on that with the Chaos book by Tom O'Neill, because it fits into a lot of these conspiracies about mind control, MKUltra, and that's kind of what, like, to bring it back to Zootopia, that's kind of what the purpose is of these Disney movies is a form of mind control. Like Kathy O'Brien, she claims to have been a victim of the Project Monarch programming, and she said in her book, in Transformation of America, that she would go to Disney World and they would do all kinds of stuff, and that the whole purpose of the Disney film is a traumatization program to create MKUltra mind controlled slaves, right? And we know that corporate America likes to target the youth, because if you ever read Fast Food Nation, that's the whole goal is you put these characters, Ronald McDonald and Grimace, in these commercials, and the kids want to go eat the Happy Meal, so then they're going to get a lifelong customer of McDonald's. I know I'm guilty of that myself. I love McDonald's, but and also, you know, Ronald Reagan in the 80s, he wrote the legislation because it used to be, you know, and I grew up on 80s cartoons like Masters of the Universe and G.I. Joe and all that stuff, and I love it to this day. But that used to be illegal until Ronald Reagan signed legislation to open it up for corporations to basically sell us stuff. And if you watch any documentary about the creation of any of those cartoons, they always say the idea came from the action figure first, and they said, oh, we'll just have a weekly 30-minute commercial, basically, for these kids to be, you know, persuaded to buy these action figures. That's where they made their money. This is
essentially a long version summary of what we've been putting together here, the Disney proxy. And the short version of Disney proxy is just like a young Isaac is left all alone by the babysitter to put on this movie, and the character goes through something traumatic, and the kid identifies with that. So now they're also going through something traumatic. And the very first thing that you see after you're brought out of that state of trauma is going to be some cute little intellectual property. It's going to be a Thumper. It's going to be a Sebastian the Crab and Little Mermaid. It's going to be Olaf the Snowman if it's in Frozen. Whatever it is, it's going to be this unique thing, so that when you go to McDonald's, you know, the next week or 10 years later, and you see that character, the same one that rescued you after the hunter shot your mom, right? Now it's like, oh my God, I don't know why, but I just have a feeling of calm and relief all of a sudden that I just saw Thumper. Yeah, I'll buy that backpack. Yeah, I'll buy that action figure, whatever it is. And that Disney over time can just implant like hundreds of those things, hundreds of these triggers. So the next time you're out in the wild and you just see it on a backpack or you see it on a keychain, part of you is like, I need that. I want that. Like that makes me feel good.
Yeah, I was left alone with friends and things to play Street Fighter 2 back in the day. Last month, our McDonald's had street burgers, the special street
Right.
burgers. And
Now that's
I was,
awesome, but
should
it's
I
the
get
same
one of
thing.
those? Now I looked, one had an egg on it. I didn't want that. One was a chicken burger, maybe, but I'd rather have a hamburger. And the other had like 3 patties. I'm like, well, I don't need that. So ultimately, I did not buy a street burger, but I did appreciate the marketing.
Man,
but
I mean,
it was like, I want that, right?
Your guys' McDonald's puts eggs on the burger?
Yeah, all through the fall, it's a thing about harvest moons, and then they equate that with eggs, and then there's like lots of restaurants will have like egg related foods in the fall because of the harvest moon.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's good.
I
I
don't
like
trust
it. I like
eggs ever since they took out Prodigy. I won't eat eggs.
You're a
Yeah,
true conspiracy theorist.
That's how deep I go. Yeah, I don't touch eggs now.
I'm not a big egg guy. Oh, wild tangent, by the way. I just need. Sorry, Isaac. I have to talk about a week or two ago. We did Baymax, right? And we looked at the original green Baymax. Listeners will remember. So I was blowing my students' minds. I teach, kids like 3 to 18 or whatever, and blowing kids' minds by showing the original Baymax. And then I had 2 girls, both about 8 years old, where I showed it to them, and they just said no, turned around and walked away. That was the best response by far. Just I'm been meaning to bring that up. Okay, tangent complete.
Here, let me steer us back on a little bit too, because we left off talking about Charles Manson and MKUltra cults and everything. We do have that kind of represented in Zootopia, because when they can't figure out what the next step is, right? They're trying to investigate these missing mammals, which, by the way, was like expertly dropped at like 14 minutes in. They already have all these character development, and it's like, bam, here's the plot of the movie. They have to find these 14 missing mammals, and the first place they go is to this like naked hot yoga cult where everyone's like a nudist, and they have the insight on everyone, and they also consult with the fox, right? And the fox, he knows all these underworld people. Like, this is, again, if we were to lay this on top of how MKUltra worked, it was the government officials getting with cult members and cult leaders and like the underworld, the mafiosos, and working hand in hand with them against the common good. It was like a Space Wars of the 50s. So I think that we're re-seeing exactly how this operates, but we're seeing it from the point of view of the bunny cop.
Oh, that's fascinating. That's a good connection there. And I have in my notes about that scene because yoga is one of the, basic occult activities. Because back when they started doing yoga, it was a religious thing. It was it means to yoke or to union, and it's about the practitioner unionizing with a deity or a god. Aleister Crowley even wrote a whole book about yoga. I realize that today, in America, 99.9% of people do it for stretching and health and stuff. But the original purpose was more occulted, right? It was more about, because whenever you get into the occult, it's always these left-hand or right-hand paths of trying to make contact with God, trying to harness the divinity and stuff like that. So yoga obviously is a major practice within that. And that scene you're talking about, if I'm not mistaken, all those missing animals, they find, I don't know if they find out, but they show them they're in a lab, right? And the scientists are
in an abandoned insane asylum, essentially on top of a dam out on the outskirts. Yeah, and that's where they've got them all locked up, and they've been doing like chemical experiments on them.
Right, and that's exactly what they were doing. That's exactly the motivation behind MKUltra. I got this book called Secrets and Lies by Gordon Thomas, and this thing is fascinating because it goes through how the program was working and how that's why what's his name, Whitey Bulger, he was in prison getting MKUltra. They would always go to POW camps. The military camps, like there was the Operation Phoenix in Vietnam, where they were doing all these crazy experiments, and a lot of these other countries are doing heinous stuff too. So we sort of followed suit with some of these things. I mean, at least that's what the official narrative is. I'm who knows what to believe, but yeah, you see that sort of idea here in Zootopia with these predators, right? These animals have gone savage, I should say. These savage animals that they're hiding from the public and doing experiments on, which is they're doing it because they're like, look, we're at risk of this utopia going to a full collapse if all these predators end up going savage. Like we got to stop this, and it has to be done under any means necessary. And that was what fueled the MKUltra stuff. Was, oh my God, like they're going to brainwash everybody into communism, and we've got to that's what they used to defend some of these heinous things they were doing. I mean, they were like drugging people without their acknowledgement. They were torturing people.
In this movie, you've got like these interesting government corruption subplots, right? So the first subplot, which is a little over halfway into the movie, is that she discovers the mayor knows about this and that he's got a scientist, and they're just running tests on these 14 feral animals locked up in this like MKUltra lab, right? All in secret. And that he's legitimately been hiding this from the public because he's concerned if the public finds out it's only predators that are going savage, then the whole divide between prey and predators will break down. It's exactly what happens. But when the bunny busts this up and she reveals it to everyone, the world basically freaks out. All Zootopia is like, we can't trust predators. Predators are no longer allowed to be the front-facing members of any group or organization or brand or any of that. And it starts shifting the dynamics so that the preys run the world. And then you find out that he was corrupt in that he was hiding it to prevent chaos, but it was sort of like for the greater good in his mind, right? He's like, I don't want the world to go crazy. I'm not part of this. I don't know what's causing it, but I know that if this information gets out, it's too volatile. This is like the ultimate secret society plot point, right? It's like the knowledge is so dangerous that if some dumb normie out there gets a hold of this knowledge, it'll destroy their brain, it'll destroy society. So in society's better interest, I need to keep this for me and my elite friends so that the dummies don't find out about this and ruin their lives. But he's kind of right a little bit, like in how that plays out, right? Like, and that is like the ultimate G-man, company man, spook CIA agent in the 1950s is that mayor. But really who's running the plot is someone that's trying to usurp the mayor using his exact same like government corruption. Like she knows that he's going to be corrupt, so she uses it against him, and then she's even more corrupt than he is. It's such a deep layer of like government corruption for children.
What's interesting, one of the earlier versions of this was at the time the film was going to be called Savage Seas. So it's going to be a James Bond style adventure, and I guess sort of the Fox. No, it doesn't sound good, but it's just interesting that pushes harder everything you were just saying. Jack Savage was going to be an Arctic hare, which was basically like your James Bond type. So I guess you would still have the general same plot, just from a very different angle in that case. And two Incredibles, really, like the Incredibles, it feels too much like that to me. But so, you know, in that case, I guess the moving the story along to something different worked out nicely. But yeah, the word savage there, we got a lot more of the CIA, because now we have a CIA agent as the star of the movie in this earlier version.
Mm-hmm. There's the flowers that are making the predators go savage. They're these blue flowers, which they're called night howlers, I think is what they're called.
Howlers, yeah.
Night howlers. And to me, when I saw that, I mean, you can call me crazy or not. My thought immediately went to the forget-me-nots that we saw in Eyes Wide Shut. Remember the scene at the beginning where Sandor Savast is the old guy that's dancing with Nicole Kidman, right? And at the Ziegler house party. And that flower, the forget-me-not flower, was used by Freemasons in Germany and was supposed to represent, you know, don't forget the poor. And then later it was used by Masons to recall the Holocaust and all this stuff. And, you know, fun fact, Sandor Savast, Sandor is Anton LaVey's middle name, so there's like another strange connection there. But the symbolism there, I kind of throw that out there because it could be something there, it could be nothing. I mean, it's a blue flower.
I got a little bit of that. I got a little bit of nightshade, and the shape of them look like Datura, which is the angel
where my
trumpet,
mind went.
little upside down bells, right?
Oh,
and I mean that is one of the OG MKUltra drugs that they originally started experimenting on people. Which is the one still that you put on like the back of your ear and a little patch to like prevent yourself from getting seasick or whatever. That's essentially came from MKUltra research, and I think that was the closest visually to all this.
Oh,
I remember 10 or 15 years ago, and hey, maybe I'll do it today, going to the Arrowwood website and just reading Tales of Datra, which was always filled with all of the stories ended with the person in hospital or in a prison cell. Yeah. And they were always smoking fake cigarettes. That was kind of an interesting thing. Like half of the stories, like I kept smoking fake cigarettes. So, you know, maybe that's just habitual or something.
I thought that was fascinating because again, now we also have this. If you're 7-year-olds watching this, they now understand how the government can kidnap them under the guise of law and like get them drugs that are going to make them act differently. And it's wild that so many different story beats happen in this. And there's also a few different visual changes that'll happen once they revert to the state. One of them is the glowing red eyes, which kind of reminded me of the wild man theories and like the Bigfoot theories and the Howlers, where like you can see the glimmer of their eyes off in the distance. They go back to all fours, which also, if you're going on like this like Rosicrucian human intellect angle, that once you go feral, like the children that are raised feral, that they also skip that human intellect step and that they will typically revert to all fours. And if they go beyond a certain time, if you go back to like the bicameral brain theory, but that if they don't obtain intellect or consciousness at a certain point developmentally, then they kind of never will, and they'll always revert back to this this four-legged stance. And this is exactly how they can tell someone in Zootopia has had these night howlers, is the glowing red eyes and the fact that they go on all fours again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the whole thing to me is like, what I find interesting is that you find these elements of things that the modern day Illuminati, the big conspiracies about how they divide us to ultimately deceive us and take control. And I'm in the camp of a lot of the theorists out there who think that they'll use anything to further their goals. It doesn't really matter if it's, communism or fascism or whatever. It's whatever gets the job done has kind of always been the theory by all the sort of old school, red pill daddies. But the sort of race element here is sort of connected into the occult as well. If you look at Helena Blavatsky from Theosophy talking about root races, and there's elements of that you find in the Dark Enlightenment not to go. I mean, on a complete side tangent, but the Dark Enlightenment movement has elements of that. It's these elements of how, you know, some people are more, you know, intelligent than others, or whatever they want to say. But the thing I find interesting with this film is that, like you said earlier, at the very beginning, it's clear that this is, in the original state that the movie presents itself, is a sort of, you know, quote unquote woke. It's very much celebrating diversity, you know, and this, I believe, is a commentary on some of the MAGA movement, which is, you know, it would, you know, the MAGA movement was very much like, hey, the immigrants are the problem. In fact, you know, Trump just the other day was like, I don't know why our immigrants can't all be from Norway or Scandinavia and all these like predominantly white cultures, right? And he says, oh, the Haitians, which are, you know, this dark-skinned people, oh, the Haitians, they're eating your dogs and cats. Like, they very much use this fear of the other to pursue whatever agenda they're trying to pursue. And that's exactly what you see in this movie, literally, because it's hey, it's this woke, diverse utopia, and then here comes the fear playbook, and it's this fear of, oh my god, like these predators are going savage, and we gotta bring in some law and order to protect everybody. We have to implement this police state, which is, you know, again, the sort of the playbook you're seeing now, where you got Department of Homeland Security and ICE and all these cities and National Guard. These are things that are fairly unprecedented in America, and it's just interesting to me that this movie was made so many years ago, and it almost sort of shows you what's going on today in a way, with this law and order sort of vibe that, and this is not a commentary saying that like we don't need law and order. Like I'm okay with some level of law and order, but it is a slippery slope to authoritarianism, which is, you know, a concern for me. But the Fox and Bunny, they sort of fall into this, the predator and prey. Everyone is manipulated in this system. Like, the only people that win are the Illuminati types, the people that are in on the game, on the gag. And this is just like you see in the old Fritz Lang movie Metropolis. This is like that famous quote from George Carlin, you know, it's a big club and you ain't in it. So you've got conservatives and liberals both getting the short end of the stick because they're not in on it. It's not what this is about. Like, that's the shit. That's the stuff that they sprinkle on us to keep us arguing and fighting amongst each other, as, you know, prey and predator in the movie. And meanwhile, they do their own thing to pursue their own agenda. And you see a lot of the, you know, they're playing chess and we're playing checkers, basically, right? And you see that.
Just there was like a MAGA overlay on this. My first thought is that we need a Zooanon, like third movie. It's going to be called Zooanon. All right, keep going.
So in some markets, by the way, this film was called Zootropolis as opposed to Zootopia. So
really?
So Metropolis went a little harder. Yeah. No, Zootopia obviously sounds better. What was the really sugary, horrible thing we were all drinking in the 90s again? Fruitopia. There we go. Yeah. Of course, that's what I thought it was.
Coca-Cola's version of Snapple, essentially. And
right.
And just speaking about like the whole Illuminati secret society angle, and that's who's making out. Like, those are the ones that are winning in this Zootopia movie. This is also the third, maybe the fourth, Disney movie that explicitly shows initiation ritual. Not like a symbolic one, but they literally go through an initiation. They have to do a sworn oath. The other ones that I could think of was Finding Nemo had the initiation ritual. Monsters U had a fraternity initiation ritual. Zootopia has one. And then there was the other zoo movie that also had an initiation ritual followed by an actual child sacrifice death cult. What was it called? Into the Wild?
The Wild, I think.
The Wild, yeah.
Yeah. And they're all recent. You know, Disney wasn't really sticking those in until recently.
Disney, in my mind, Damo Lade Disney would have been horrified at someone actually visualizing an initiation ritual of any kind. I think that he was more of the philosophy that, like, you have to subtly implant the symbolism. You can't beat people over the head with it. And as soon as he dies, that's kind of what you start seeing, is like they take the symbolism and they beat you over the head with it. It's a literal initiation ritual. It's a literal like human turning into an animal or vice versa. But like classic Disney was a little bit more nuanced. It was all way more Masonic and Rosicrucian. And to put a little feather in the Masonic cap, I don't know if you guys noticed, but when they actually go to find the very first missing creature that unravels the whole case, the road they take to get there is actually called Acacia Alley. So there's another little Masonic note in there, because the acacia is incredibly symbolic, especially in the third degree of Masonry.
Oh, I didn't know that. I hadn't heard that
It
before.
represents the concept of resurrection, and this is after Hiram Abiff gets murdered by the three ruffians that are trying to steal his Masonic knowledge. The acacia sprig is how the Masons find his body and raise him back out. So like the acacia sprig represents this occult symbolism of reincarnation.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. And I literally just read through most of the, I think it was it the Master Mason degree where they do
You got to go through the real degree, man. That's where they tell you about it.
Oh, see, there's levels to this, man. Yeah. I had, the director and writer of Zootopia, Jared Bush, his family were CIA agents, and he said that was actually the inspiration for the film, was the CIA, because he was trying to make a spy movie was the plan. And he's the founder of Dark Castle Entertainment, and they've given us occulted movies like As Above, So Below, which is a movie about finding the Philosopher's Stone through the writings of Nicholas Flamel, which is kind of a famous alchemist that you can find in the story of Harry Potter as well. But the whole thing is showing us the truth about like what goes on in these covert systems. You know, like we know that drugs are also part of the government agenda, the war on drugs. And you saw Trump the other day labeled fentanyl a weapon of mass destruction or whatever. They use this on a couple fronts. They'll come out and publicly say like, hey, this is terrible. Let's stop doing all this stuff. And we're going to blow up boats and all this stuff. And you can't get caught bringing it into the country. But then they fund secret black ops projects with this money, right? That's like what the whole
Trump
thing
would never do that. He's here to end all of that. Are you kidding me?
That's what I hear. That's what he tells us.
He's going to end all that for us.
Yeah, I can't wait. So
I
want to add one extra annoying layer on this movie too, though, that I had to pick up, is that this one point in which the rabbit gets afraid of her sidekick buddy, right, the fox, because she's prey and he's predator. It turns into, in my mind, it was like, oh, is this now also a commentary on female cops always being afraid for their lives and then using unnecessary extra force, getting everyone else in the trouble because she carries this fox repellent on her? And he's like, I knew that you've had that this entire time. So it was just one extra on top of the wokeness and the left and right and the Democrat, Republican and the black and white and all that. Here's also a commentary on female cops entering the police force.
I was wondering, Isaac, you mentioned the politics of and this time I wonder if they actually tripped up a little bit doing this, because this comes out in March 2016, is like the fourth biggest money maker of the year. Our villain of the ultimate villain of the movie, of course, is Don Bellwether, who is the very, like progressive kind of like type B person who turns out to be the secret baddie, whereas the big brash mayor is the lion. I got his name here, Leodore Lionheart. Sort of the brash, headstrong politician who seems like the obvious villain, turns out to be, basically like not. So
well,
as the year plays out. Yeah,
because he still was lying to people intentionally and keeping this information to himself. And I say that's probably the most unrealistic aspect of this entire movie. Isn't even that animals are now living as people and driving cars. It's that somebody that high up in the government would actually be held accountable the way that he was, even after the fact. I think that's the most unrealistic part of this.
Oh no! When Joe Biden said he didn't know about what was going on, he didn't hear about it. I believed him.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah.
If I slept through it, I don't know.
Yeah, that's mostly why.
Yeah, I think the movie overall is like my major takeaway is the components of Satanism, and then the sort of real life application. Like I said, Jared Bush, who wrote the movie, comes from a CIA family, so he is privy to some of these ideas, I'm sure. And you literally see this kind of stuff in Hollywood movies, like the Agent Provocateur and One Battle After Another. But these ideas that this Hegelian dialect sort of strategy of putting on this show for us and trying to sort of scare us into whatever agenda they're trying to push. And to me, ultimately, I think it is the agenda is ultimately a sort of surveillance system or a system run by AI or a Great Reset system that puts us into a when in Klaus Schwab's book, The Great Reset, he talks about putting us onto our energy usage on a blockchain. And again, it's this idea of they use whatever they can, right? So to scare liberals, it's this whole thing of like climate change and, oh my God, we're going to run out of energy. And, if you, and let me give you an example, because I'm kind of a liberal guy. So like I'm very moderate with all my views. But in Utah here, for instance, for an example, I had a house, my last house, we moved in and it had a wood burning stove. This is 2009. And the wood burning stove was all messed up. So we replaced it. It was, a couple $1,000, which we didn't have at the time, but I was like, wow, this is fun. And I really enjoyed that wood burning stove. So Utah, we live in a bowl, where basically in the wintertime, there's an inversion system. You have to talk to a weather nerd, but the pollution, all the pollution from everything gets trapped in our air because of the way the mountains are and pressure systems and things like this. And there's supposedly nothing we can do besides reduce our pollutants. So the state does this study and they say, hey, we got to all chip in on this. And part of the solution was to have more people carpool for work because we get these red air days throughout the winter. You can look it up. It's pretty crazy. Utah has some of the dirtiest air in the world on certain days in the winter. And, the solutions are, hey, we want you guys to carpool. And then also they banned wood burning stoves. And I was like, what the hell, man? And they're like, well, wood burning stove has all these extra pollutants. And ultimately I was like, all right, fine. I won't burn it on the, I think it was yellow air days. You're not allowed to burn it. And I was like, all right, fine, whatever. And turns out if you dig into the study, you find that almost a third of the pollutants come from the corporations out here. We've got oil refineries and stuff, and they aren't asked to do anything. They aren't even asked to reduce how much they put out, like nothing. They literally have to do nothing different. But everyone who lives here and pays taxes and lives in this state is asked to carpool and not run their heat and do all this crazy stuff. And then they did the same thing a couple years later with our water, because like we're running low on water, but it could be because of the water rights usages, because we have these alfalfa hay farms where they're using something like 70% of our water to make alfalfa hay, which they sell overseas. So it helps our state GDP. I don't know if GDP is the right term, but the state's economy.
This is like the Saudis doing this too, right? Like the Saudis come over here.
Yes.
They buy up farmland and they tap into the existing aquifer system and then like basically siphon the water away from all the surrounding farms that have been there for 100 years. Grow their alfalfa, and then immediately send it back to Saudi Arabia.
Yes, that's exactly what's going on. It goes to China and Saudi Arabia.
And they're protected by Blackwater with guns, literally.
Yes. And our Governor Cox, he owns one of these alfalfa farms. And they come out and they're like, oh my God, we need water. And they're like, we want you guys to stop watering your lawn. So all of our grass is dead. And I'm okay with it because I'm just, again, an idiot. And I'm like, well, hey, we need water. What are you going to do? A green yard isn't that big of a deal. So all my grass is freaking dead. Some of the neighbors, they don't have dead grass. And they had the system where you could call and snitch. I didn't do that, but I wanted to because I'd walk my dog and I'd be like, this is bullshit. Like my grass is dead and you're allowed to have green grass. Like you do your part, dude. Turns out, like a year later, the U of U did a study, and long story short, basically residential water usage was not even an issue. It was like 5% of the problem. Meanwhile, these alfalfa farms are 70% of the problem. So anyway, my point is like they play whoever they can, however they can to further their agenda. And like I hate to be one of these guys that's like super anti-government, but sometimes these guys are corrupt as hell, and they do this stuff, and it sucks because. It just sucks because like you want to have this sort of idea that we can all work together to make this a better place, but then you got these adversarial interest in there that mess with the population and put these fear-based ideas out there, which is what you see in Zootopia.
Well, I think you summarized one of the major plot points of Zootopia too. Like one of the other takeaways that I think like a kid might walk away with without explicitly being told it is that it's not the government and it's not the system and it's not all the surveillance itself that's bad. It's just whoever is behind that, whoever's sitting in the chair. If it's a lying lion, which ironically he's a liar. If it's him, it doesn't go well. If it's the woke secretary type B personality that's ultra corrupt, it doesn't go well either. But maybe if it's someone with pure heart and pure intent, that the state surveillance can be a good thing, and it's not something that we have to worry about. And I think that's ultimately the story that you walk away with here, because no one wants to take down Zootopia. No one wants to take down the system that allowed this to happen to begin with. The whole premise is just like, we just had a bad apple at the helm. We just got to replace the bad apple.
Well, 8 years earlier, you got the Dark Knight where Batman does it. It's bad that Batman's doing it, but he's Batman. So he's the only person with the moral fiber to survey everything, you know?
The Philosopher King, yeah.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to go in this movie, I think you're kind of talking about kind of the rural planning, but, you know, think of Disney with the big map behind them, right? You know, proposing Epcot, and there's of course, the urban planning. They call Disneyland itself like, it's a, you know, one of stalwart of urban planning or whatever. And I was thinking utopias, dystopias, it always seems to be kind of like a central spoke and maybe a little bit else. Because in Zootopia, Judy Hopps comes from the little town, 150 miles out of Zootopia. She goes Zootopia. And I haven't seen the second one. I just opened, but it does feel like very insular. Like there is only Zootopia and like a few outside things. In the Hunger Games, it's like there's the big city and then there's the rest of America falling apart. Planet of the Apes. I've been doing podcasts on Planet of the Apes, and the 70s Planet of the Apes in particular. It's like there's Ape City, there's a few settlements, and that's it. It's like a utopia, dystopia can't really think outside a radius of more than, 100 miles.
Well, speaking of the utopia versus dystopia, I guess to shoehorn this in too, that Aldous Huxley's first book was called The Island, which is what Zootopia is. Zootopia is an island, and that was the predecessor to his Brave New World, and it was basically a utopian story. So think like the Huxley DNA in this one with the MKUltra and the utopian ideals and the whole like entertaining yourselves to death. It's very, very strong.
Yeah, I think Disney can do Huxley. I'm not sure Disney could handle Orwell. I don't know. Prove me wrong. I think maybe they'll make an animated Animal Farm movie Disney style.
Maybe Wall-E. Wall-E was a little bit Orwellian.
Yeah, okay. But it was still like kind of the cute version, right? You got that spaceship, like, oh, it's all shiny, everyone's fat.
But before we get too far in and start wrapping up too, I also have to point out that there is a number of like Breaking Bad jokes inserted into this movie, which just highlights that a teenager or an adult watching this is getting so many other references. There's like some pretty adult things that even early on in the movie, this girl goes up to the cop and goes like, "My mommy wishes you were dead," like straight up wishes death on her, this little child. It's just kind of funny because like that's something that you might actually hear a parent say to a meter maid, or the parent like is thinking that and doesn't say it. And then at the very end, they're showing you how they're processing these night howler, nightshade, datura flowers into this savage drug. And it's basically a sheep wearing the like hazmat suit that like Walter White would be wearing in the series. And when he has to get on the phone, he's like, "Oh, let me call my guys." And he calls Walter and Jesse. So it's like 100% a Breaking Bad reference in the middle of this Disney movie, which is a little bit out of character of a typical Disney movie.
Yeah, definitely. And you're talking about the scene where they're in the lab and the chemist, and I noticed that because they've got the upright, it's sort of an alchemy reference too, because they've got an upright orange triangle, and in alchemy, the upright triangle represents fire and masculinity. So I found it interesting that they knew to use the right color to correspond to the right symbol of alchemy instead of using, like blue or brown or something like that. Like they used the upright triangle as masculine or the sun or the solar powers.
This movie in particular, I feel like they put way more effort and craft into the color theory versus almost any other 3D animated Disney movie we've seen in the last like 2 decades worth. Like
Yeah.
perfected the animation and the aesthetic so well that now they're like, let's really hone in on the colors.
That's really what happened. Actually, when I was going through his stuff, it seems like a lot of the past movies, like, oh, Bolt was pretty good with the fur. Let's up our game on that. Well, in Frozen, we did all this hair stuff. Let's up our game on that, and mention using the lighting system for Monsters University, which I remember you had thought looked pretty good. So they are taking like the multiple methods they've used in the past 10 movies and kind of using them all in this movie. This is the movie where I completely don't like start noticing if it's Pixar or Disney, you know? Right. This was kind of my before that I was pretty aware which was which, and since Zootopia I'm like it doesn't matter is the actual answer. But
we basically hit this like crest. It's not necessarily uncanny valley because it's so cartoonish that you're already suspending disbelief a little bit as you're watching it, but that the actual technology they're using is advanced far enough that you're no longer nitpicking over like, oh, something looks kind of weird. So they can actually start using real symbolism and real color theory and it not be a distraction. Like the subtle programming is now working again.
And we skipped ahead a few months ago to Coco, where that like had that, you know, amped up even more because that's like a year or two later, right? So it was honed even more when we got to that movie. I remember us talking a whole bunch about the color theory in there.
My last big note on here too is just it was funny. There was an inside joke about bootleg movies where they had all these like Zootopia adjacent, like animal adjacent Disney movies, like Pig Hero 6, and they had Wrangled instead of Tangled that had a horse in it, and they even had like straight up like New York sort of like bootleg movies. One was called Giraffic and one was called like Floatzin 2, which was supposed to be like Frozen 2, but it was complete bootleg.
The other two being Wreck-It Rhino and Meow Anna, just to get the list complete.
That's funny.
I did pause and write down, and I was like, actually, the note after I wrote them down is like, well, these aren't actually that funny. I was like, kind of regretting I had paused it to write them down, but hey, we need it. We need to chart what happened.
Good eye, guys, man, way to catch it all.
I gotta say again, man, it's start wrapping this up a little bit, but if this was the first one that you've seen because people recommended you see it because all the different symbolism, 100% right. But also, if you were to go back and watch the last 40 Disney movies that came out before this, I don't think many of them even hold a candle to this one. So if you see Zootopia and you don't like it, I don't think there's a lot of other 3D animated movies you would, unless you just like bad 3D movies. Then maybe you'd like them.
I think this kind of is the Robin Hood for the the Zoomer generation.
Well, even the credits, as the credits scroll at the end, just to get on like outside the occult realm for a second, but as it ends, it turns into a freaking concert featuring the girl that everyone's been talking about and like downloading her app in it. So it was a nice seamless transition. And then as the concert's going, the concert becomes the credits. And there's all these different animal characters, and it brought me right back to Robin Hood again. Because in the credits of Robin Hood, it's got all the rhinos and the foxes and all these animals dancing as the credits go by. So I think this is probably a direct reference to that original Robin Hood credit sequence, and I also think it's probably as good. Like it's up there because that was one of the better ones.
Yeah, as I was mentioning, the impetus of this movie was John Lasseter, who's running both studios at the time, just being, gee, we should make another Robin Hood sort of movie, and that's eventually turns into this one. So it's actually a pretty direct thought and a direct line. So that sounds like it's 100%
totally
correct.
A 3D reanimation of Robin Hood. I mean, I'd see it. I don't know if I'm going to say
I want to see a live action one where they're all wearing furry costumes.
Okay, furries.
That's what I want to see. Low budget. It cannot be made for not. You can give it a proper craft table. $5 million budget. Furry costume Robin Hood. There we go.
Did we miss anything, or you think we got most of it for Zootopia First Pass?
That's all I had in my notes. That was a good one, though. You guys sound like we were looking at similar things, so I'm glad that I wasn't too far off base with it.
I think actually I lied. I do have one. I have two other ones. Well, a quick one is that
Lion.
There is Lion. They do reference that someone sold a skunk butts rug to another animal, so there is this implication that there's like an Ed Gein sort of like animals within this civilized society that are still mutilating each other and selling, animal parts to other animals. I thought that was kind of like an interesting angle on it.
And that's also a major element of MKUltra, because I'm reading through David McGowan's Program to Kill, and he implies that the whole idea of a serial killer is sort of a fabricated thing that the CIA and stuff does to sort of scare us into thinking that, hey, it could be me next kind of thing.
Which also might scare people in general from just eating meat. I could see Zootopia being used to like perpetuate like a vegan kind of lifestyle or the bug lifestyle, because that was the other big thing that I kept coming up, is that just like in The Lion King, the most insidious part of The Lion King to me is that they're teaching children that if you just changed a lion's morality, then they'll stop eating their friends and they'll eat bugs. Like literally the Lion King eats bugs to sustain himself. And in Zootopia, I kind of feel it's the same feel. Like you get the idea that no one here is eating each other, right? That would be a breakdown of society. There's no more prey and
Soylent
predator.
Green. Then they could eat each other.
It could be Soylent Green, or more likely, it could just be bugs. They're just eating bugs the whole time, which seems to be this new recurring thing that Disney is not going to tell you, like human children and human parents, that you have to eat bugs, but they're going to show you that predators out in the wild that are carnivores, that they can eat bugs. And the implication is like, well, if a lion can eat bugs and survive, then you probably can too, since you're an omnivore. And I feel that this is just a slow roll of the new, like, what is it, like Agenda 2020 or whatever.
Yeah, that's where there was, I forget her name. There's some because years and years and years ago, I was trying to pursue a vegan sort of diet, and I ultimately gave up because I was like, I hate this. But because I love animals so much, like I if I had to kill my own meat, like I would be a vegan, but I'm not. So I am a terrible person. I just buy the meat, right? But the whole thing with it, I realized, because there was documentaries that you can find, and you'll find that they're all financed by this chick who's like a billionaire who is really obsessed with the vegan lifestyle, which also sometimes ties into the Dionysian thing. When we're talking about left hand, right hand path, contact with gods, you'll find that a lot of religious and occult belief systems go into a vegan diet. In fact, even in Orthodoxy, right? Like we're supposed to fast from meats and oils on many times throughout the year. Most of the year we're fasting if you adhere to it. I don't, because I'm a scumbag, but like when I was taking it very serious, like you would every Wednesday and Friday there'd be no meat, and then there was multiple periods throughout the year where you'd go weeks without eating meat, because it's supposed to, there is like a religious sort of clarity element to it. But there is also an agenda, because you see this stuff like these documentaries. The one I saw that was financed by this billionaire chick, it was all these athletes, and they were like, "Hey, look at the size of me. I'm a huge and muscular, and I don't eat any meat at all. Like you can do it without meat products." And I don't know if that's, I don't know the whole science behind it, because there are some people that do that, but I'm just trying to sort of support your point that is an agenda that they're trying to push, is like this vegan agenda, and it goes into Great Reset, eating the bugs and all that stuff.
Even your fasting that you describe, like the Orthodox version of fasting, it has way less to do with like, let's save animals for a few days. It's more because you're about to go through historically like an animal sacrifice, which would be like this big Easter dinner or whatever. But like you'll usually fast because you're spiritually cleansing yourself, so that when you have an actual like symbolic important feast, that you're going into that feast polluted by like just like your own consumption of meat and oil. So it's almost like you're
exactly
you give yourself like a tolerance break a little bit.
Yeah, and that's go ahead. Sorry.
I'll just say, I feel like Japan's almost the opposite, where traditionally they don't eat much meat in Japan, and now people are eating more and more meat. And the thing is, there's never been like a vegan. You cannot be a vegan in Japan, because if you go and say, I'm a vegan, give me a salad, they'll give you a salad with a bunch of bacon bits on top of it. And then, almost everything is using like fish base and sauce or whatever. So like, even if it seems like it's vegetables, then it has the fish sauce. So if you're vegan, you're out, here. So it's kind of weird to like kind of being pushing like, let's eat more meat on this side of the pond.
Yeah, that Western diet is taking over the world, I'm sure.
Yes, exactly. The diets are becoming more Western. They opened a Burger King near my house last week, which sounds, but hey, there hasn't been a Burger King here ever. You gotta go to Tokyo for Burger Kings. So
well, let's start doing some plugs, man. Where can people find more of your ranting, Isaac?
Ranting is a good way of putting it. So I have a podcast, Occult, Symbolism, and Pop Culture, that's everywhere. And then I'm, on all the social medias and Substacks and all kinds of places, right? And I'm trying to rebuild my YouTube. So go to YouTube at Occult Symbolism, all one word, and you can find me. Please subscribe. I'm trying to rebuild for the third time, and I'm going to be a good boy. I promise, YouTube. Don't torch me. And you can find, if all else fails and you're like, hey, what did that guy say? Go to my link tree, allmylinks.com/IsaacW, 2 A's for double awesome. And you can catch me virtually anywhere.
And I will say I'm not a fan of the one-person podcast. So yours, other than classical music podcasts, yours is the only one-person podcast I've ever listened to a few episodes of.
Dope. Thank you. That's a huge compliment. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Usually I like the banter. I guess I'll quickly do my thing as I'm talking. I talk about a bunch of media, Twilight Zone, where it's supposed to be really good and really bad movies. That's the Films and Filth podcast. That's Time Enough podcast. You can find that at podcastius.org. Okay, that's good for me today.
All right.
Roll your thing.
I can follow that. Yeah. So you just listened to a really great episode of Occult Disney, where we break down classic Disney theatrical movies, cartoons, animations. We have another series that we've been doing called Cartoon Cabal, which is the same thing, but for non-Disney animation. We started out with Neon Genesis Evangelion, which is an anime series. But as soon as we wrap that one up, I think another like 4 or 5 episodes, we're going to start going into all kinds of animations. Care Bears, Smurfs, Aeon Flux, Beavis and Butthead, just Sonic acts, just like all across the board. So if you got suggestions, or if you want to hear other occult breakdowns of other cartoons and like 80s stuff that you grew up with, you should check out Cartoon Cabal.
Well, as they say, fear always works. Bye-bye, bunny.
Just buy something. Just buy something. From Paranoid American. Just buy something. Just buy something. From Paranoid American. Get some merch, buy some art. Click that link, add to cart. Say it back, need that print. Nod your head, give consent. Buy a comic, 3 or 4. Think this thought, I want more. Buy a sticker from the store. Think this thought, I want more. Just buy something. Just buy something. From Paranoid American. Just buy something. Just buy something. From Paranoid American.
I scribble my life away, driven to write the page. Will it enlighten your brain? Give you the flight, my plane, paper, the highs ablaze. Somewhat of an amazing feel when it's real to real. You will engage it. Your favorite, of course, the Lord of an arrangement. I gave you the proper results to hit the pavement. If they get emotional, hey, maybe your language, a game, how they playing it well without Lakers. Evade them, whatever the cost, they are the shapeshift. Snakes get decapitated, met is the apex. Execution of flame you out, nuclear bomb distributed at war, rather gruesome for eyes to see. Max them out, then I light my trees. Blow it off in the face, you're despising me for what though? Calculated and rather cutthroat. Paranoid American must be all the blunt smoke for real. Lord, give me a day away, vacate. They wait around to hate whatever they say. Man, it's not in the least bit. We get heavy rotate when the beat hits, so thank us, you're welcome. Fuck the niggas for real, you're welcome. They ain't never had a deal, you're welcome. Man, they lacking appeal, you're welcome. Yet they doing it still, you're welcome.